So welcome to today's webinar resident series, Next Level Dentures in 3 appointments. It is being presented by Jimmy Stegall, CDT, and we will begin the program shortly. My name is Jessica Respondek. I'm the education manager here at NDX. I'm going to go through some housekeeping tips and tricks, and then I'm going to turn the intro over to Adam, who will begin the show, and Jimmy will take over from there. And with that, it is now my pleasure to introduce Adam Dreyfus, Director, University, Government, and Institutions. Take it away, Adam.
Oh, good morning, Jessica. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. NDX is here for you today, tomorrow, and for the future. And as you know, I am here. I will be back at the end of the presentation, but enough from me. I would like to turn it over to our esteemed guest and presenter today, Jimmy Stegall. Please take it away.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Jessica. Appreciate you guys having me again. So dentures is a hot topic right now. And, you know, we hear the term digital dentures. I like to think of it as, you know, we're not making and selling digital dentures. We're creating workflows. And, you know, I liken it to my experience, you know, having run a large lab for 40 years and, you know, doing 100 dentures a day, spending a lot of time chairside helping docs. You know, think about a patient, you know, Bob, and how many appointments it took to get Bob's denture delivered. You know, and the national average is around 8, and then the post-delivery appointments average 3 to 5. So, you know, it's not uncommon that you hear people say they don't like to do dentures. It's just we don't like the number of appointments. We don't like the difficulty and challenge of the impressions and the bites. The bite rims are one of the most difficult things to do clinically. The number of wax try-in appointments, and then all the post-delivery adjustments. And then if the patients ever lose it, you know, it's an anxiety-driven thing because the doc has to start all over. I was with doing a program with Dr. Wendy Clark from Chapel Hill the other day, and she mentioned a study where they counted the number of appointments to do dentures with all the dental students over a period. And, you know, the average was 8, as expected, even with dental students, and then 5 for post-delivery. So basically the patient came to the school 13 times, you know, for their denture. And they did the same, in the same study, they measured the digital denture workflows. And when a student did a digital dental workflow, it was 86, 88% of the time, 5% took more than 5 appointments, right? So the other 95% took less than 5 appointments total. So digital workflows really cut our time, and that's a good thing, right? And cutting the time kind of makes it all better for the patient and the dentist. So we're going to talk about a couple of workflows, but the reference denture will be the easiest entry point to get into this workflow. You know, we all learned this way in school, how dentures are supposed to be made in 5 appointments, but we all know that visit 4 quite often turns into visit 4A and 4B and sometimes 4C. Now, I tell folks all the time, you want to look at this workflow because the result of this workflow is a denture that fits better than any denture we've ever had. Acrylic, as good as we've gotten with acrylic, and we have injection processes for acrylic and all those things, we've made acrylic dentures better. But in reality, if you look at any denture fit study ever done on acrylic dentures, even with injection, we're not getting the fit that we want to get or that we should get for dentures. You know, dentures don't stay in by suction. Suction is a term that came into being because we added things like post dams and heavy extended rolled borders to create suction to make up for what wasn't there, and that's called adhesion or cohesion. And think about a drop of water, 2 pieces of glass. That's the dynamic that's supposed to keep a denture in the mouth, right? But in order for that dynamic to work, there has to be an intimacy of fit between the piece of glass, right, the 2 pieces of glass, or the denture base and the tissue. And that intimacy of fit has been, most research tells us, somewhere around 100 microns, right? 70 to 120 microns. If we've got that perfect amount of space over the entirety of the surface of the denture for saliva, then the denture stays in really well. The problem is acrylic processing, traditional or otherwise, can't obtain that routinely. It's a very difficult thing over 100% of the surface. We can get it here or there, but that's why adhesive is the #1 consumer product out there. So when we tell a computer to make a denture and we say, hey, make it fit this, the computer's going to do exactly that. And we say, make it fit to within 50 microns. Well, it does that. And we can recreate that now because we have out of a design, because we now have a printer or a mill that's accurate enough to do so and the materials to put in them. So your biggest win, and what you'll notice first and foremost every time, is how a denture fits. A CAD/CAM denture, a digital denture, whether it's milled or printed is irrelevant, is going to fit the patient's tissue better than any denture you've ever noticed. The patients will notice it and the dentist will notice it. And now, Dentsply product, and I've been with them for 6 years, and they're over 500,000 of these arches. And I hear it all the time, right? It's the number one comment from docs and patients. I can't believe how well this thing fits. The next biggest win for dentists is having that digital record on file. So no more anxiety, right? If the patient loses it, you just call the lab and they push print, right? And print you another one. It's that easy, and can even use that data later in future to do a reline or do a remake of the same denture. So everything cuts down, right? And so we're going to talk about the reference denture workflow, right? And the reference denture workflow utilizes the patient's existing denture for our initial records, right? I'm not sure why it took so long in our world for this idea to come around, but the reference denture, albeit a denture that could be worn, it could be ugly, the patient could not like it, it's still a better, easier starting point than starting from scratch with a tray and a bite rim. Because we have teeth there and the patient has some sort of semblance of knowing where it goes and how it fits and feels. And so having the ability to take an impression in that old denture and a bite between those two dentures becomes a much easier workflow for the clinician and the assistant and the patient, right? And the data captured is better, right? There's not many dentists I've ever met that couldn't take a wash impression in a denture pretty well. So first step, we get a better impression, right? Because we're not custom tray border molding. They're good and they work, but they're hard. This is an easier path. Getting a bite between two sets of teeth, much easier than trying to get a bite between two pieces of pink wax. So the data is better. And I've been a proponent of having better data in denture workflow for quite some time. So the reference denture workflow starts with that existing set of dentures. Again, worn out, doesn't matter to me. If we need to open the bite, then we just put some wax or putty in the back and we open the bite. But we take a wash impression and then we take that data and we can scan it in the office with the intraoral scanner and give the patient their dentures back, right? So the patient's not without their dentures ever, right? The lab has all the data they need to fabricate the dentures. And so from that data, from those scans, the lab can create what I call a prototype. I don't even like the word try-in anymore because it's a different way to do a try-in, and it is a functional prototype. So the patient can wear it for a period of time. But if anything's off, the bite, the intaglio, the doctor can adjust easily, take a new impression wash, take a new bite, right? And then return that data to the lab by either scanning or returning the actual prototype. From that data, the lab can move to the final. So this literally can be a 3-appointment or 4-appointment process, and it's being done so routinely around the country. Now, what if the patient doesn't have a denture? Well, I'll tell you this, demographics has proven to us over and over again. Wendy and their team did another study, and it's about 80% in most areas in the country. 80% of patients in the chair getting a new denture, they have a denture, right? They may not like it, they may not wear it very often, but they have a denture. We want to utilize that. So we'll talk about in a second for those other 20% that don't have a denture, how do we deal with that? But when people ask me what's the best starting point, I will say the reference denture, because that's going to be 8 out of 10 of your patients, denture patients. They already have a denture, so let's start there, right? So having that fit, having the ability to use our intraoral scanner, right, to scan that impression wash, which, by the way, is the most accurate way to scan for a dentulous restoration. Putting a wand in the mouth to scan an edentulous ridge is probably the most challenging intraoral scan. So we're not advocating that, and hardly anybody is. A couple of folks are teaching training, and it's getting better, but we need the cameras and the algorithms to get a little better to make it easier for the everyday doc. And most of us just can't do it. So, but taking a wash impression, anybody can do it. And every one of these wands can scan a wash impression very quickly, very easily. And we've learned through research now, extremely accurate. So it is our go-to, right, for denture workflows. It's get some sort of impression wash, right? Get that mucocompressive impression we're used to, and then take it out of the mouth and scan it. So all this adds up to a much better workflow. So the reference denture workflow is very simple, right? We're going to take the existing denture, put a little bit of adhesive around the border. I like to put a heavy-bodied polyvinyl siloxane around that border. We like to go in the mouth and do some border molding movements. We take it out after it's set, put a light-bodied wash on top of that, go back in the mouth and do another round of border molding movements. Do the same thing on the lower, then take the bite registration after we get the impressions, and then take everything out of the mouth and scan the upper denture impression wash and the lower, and then the bite by holding the two dentures together or going back to the mouth. We do this with just about any intraoral scan with great success. Once that data is sent to the lab will design the dentures, and the software in the lab allows them to send you a printed monolithic prototype, which is pretty easy to print and get out the door. Comes in multiple Vita tooth shades. The fact that it doesn't look like a final denture is the only bit of mental thing we've got to jump over, but it's a very minor hurdle because as opposed to a wax try-in, this is so much better of a tool to get the next step data, right? If it's wax, then we've got to count on the clinician to have the fortitude, the wherewithal, and willingness to move those teeth in wax. And most honestly don't. Most just flick it off and take a new bite. And this is just so much easier, right? If the bite's off, you do what you do every day. You get your paper out and you tap, and you grind until you get the occlusion where you want it, and then take a new bite registration. If the midline's off, like in this one, just take a Sharpie and draw the line exactly where it needs to be. All this modified data, whether it's ground in, drawn on, or an impression wash, can be rescanned and sent back to the lab, and the lab can utilize those changes layered over the original setup to make the corrections, and then print the final. So having that prototype, it's just a mindset change, right? Instead of having a burner and a spatula and wax and things like that to move teeth that try in, you're going to have an e-cutter to grind on. You're going to have impression material, a bite registration material, and paper. And we just make those modifications with those tools instead of moving teeth in wax or making notes about how we want to move teeth in wax. So it's a lot more familiar, a lot more comfortable, and the data is better, right? So it makes our try-in workflow more productive. So we basically can do this one time. If there's any changes, I can tell you that starting with the reference denture, which is good data, that means the prototype is going to be pretty close. And we're seeing in about 3 out of 5 cases, we don't do any adjustment, right? We're ready to go. And so all we really have to do is tell the lab, prototype was perfect. Please print the final. And I see that being done all over the country. So that's the reference denture workflow. Now, for that other small group, right? What about these guys, right? If they come in, and this guy, super patient, right? It came in and hadn't had a denture in about 1.5 years. He lost it, or the dog chewed it up or something. So, we have to step back in the analog world a little bit, right? And the way we like to do that, I worked with this case with Dr. Wendy at Chapel Hill, is that, look, we're going to make some base plates and bite rims, but we're going to look at our base plates a little different. There was a long time in my history that a base plate was nothing more than a better foundation to put a wax try-in on. But a base plate today, in my mind, is more of an impression tray than anything else. So we actually create these base plates now using digital technology, so it's a more accurate base plate, and put tissue stops to help with the impression. But we're going to treat this base plate exactly like we treat the reference denture, by doing that heavy-bodied border around the rim, go in the mouth, and do some border molding movements. Right. So our first appointment, we've got to make the base plates, right? So we got to start with old analogs work. Now, we went up a little bit in technology in this case, and we didn't use traditional alginate. We used an alginate substitute. That's because we can ship it, right? We don't have to worry about pouring alginate quickly. So use an alginate substitute, poured traditional stone models, and in this case, we made some traditional base plate and wax rims. Today, I will ask Wendy to just scan the soft tissue as best you can, and I feel like if she can capture, or you can capture 70-80% of the data, that's enough data to make a base plate. Not enough data to make a good denture, but certainly enough to make a good base plate. And I'd much rather print that base plate. So make the 2 base plates, make a set of bite rims, but we're going to take the impressions first, right? We'll take the upper impression, lower impression, then we're going to put them in with the bite rim, and manipulate that wax rim till we get our bite and our vertical, and going to mark the midline, the cuspid position, like we always do on bite rim. So a little bit of analog traditional work here, but we're all doing this in one appointment, right? We take both impressions and the bite in the same appointment. So we're really compressing the workflow and making it better. So you do have to get back into the analog and do a little bite rim workflow, but it's a lot easier in this environment, especially putting them together. But the bite rim is still the bite rim, but we've got to start there. But now we have the data with this wash impression set and bite rim that we can proceed, right? So that data would come to the lab, and the lab would design the prototype like the other way, right? And then send the prototypes out. So for this guy, third appointment, sent her the prototypes, and the upper was great. It was perfect. No changes needed. The lower had some modifications it needed, right? The intaglio had a spot on the left side that needed to be redone. So, she ground down on that after some pit paste and took a new wash impression, and then, modified the bite. You can see the markings on the upper, and adjusted the lower only, and then took a new bite reg. Right. So now I have new data. Right. So I grab that data, scan it with my lab scanner, and do the modifications in the software and print the final denture. So fourth appointments, we're delivering, right? And this guy said, he just couldn't get over how fast it went. This was this guy's seventh set of dentures, and he was telling us all the story experience. He's a great guy. He was never upset about, having to go through that many dentures in his life, but he said, this is amazing. The way these fit, the way these feel, he said, it almost feels like it's stuck to my gums. And, that's that intimacy of fit. That's that CAD/CAM ability to create a denture that fits so doggone well. So we're doing lots of other things with digital workflows, right? Partials, absolutely. We're creating partials, right? Flipper type partials with digital design, digital print. They fit great. And these materials that we're using, literally 3 times stronger than acrylic. So not only are we having dentures that fit really good because of CAD/CAM, but we're using materials that are 3 times stronger than acrylic. So we can worry less about repairs and fracturing, which is pretty exciting. We're doing a lot of copy denture, right? A copy denture is a workflow, primarily it's a lab workflow where we can take the scan of an existing denture, and the software will virtually separate the teeth from the base. And that will generate a couple of files. We can print teeth, print the base, and then assemble them. And the result is a denture that's exactly like the patient. So for those patients that are in the chair and say, I'll take a new denture, doc, if you'll make it just like this one. And sometimes, we wonder, why would you want it just like this one? It's kind of worn out. But, that's the reality of today's denture patient, right? If I have found many times that if I make a denture that I really want, sometimes they won't wear it, right? It's uncomfortable. The posterior teeth, the bite's open, or it's just uncomfortable. Most of the time, a patient that's comfortable in their dentures, they've really kind of settled them in, ground them in, and occlusion's not ideal, but hey, if they're wearing it, then that's a win. And ADA data has shown us that 50 to 60% of denture patients say they have a problem with their denture. And I think we need to listen and talk to our patients more about what those problems are and try to counteract that by maybe doing things like copy dentures and a denture design that, like this lady, that I typically wouldn't want to do. And she said, it's got to be just like this one. We had the conversation about cuss tips and occlusal and chewing food better and all that. And she said, nope, that's what they did with my last set, and they were terrible. I couldn't wear them. Never got comfortable in the posterior. I said, okay, we can make it just like that, right? And as I'm walking out of the room, she said, oh, can you make it fit better? So, okay, get back in the chair. And we did a wash impression in her old denture, right? And so that's good data. So now I have a good bit of intaglio data, but you can use the copy denture tool to exactly replicate her teeth, which we did. So we made her a denture that was an exact replica, but with a much better intaglio fit. And she put it in and she said, oh my God, this feels exactly like my denture, but is really staying in better. And so that's a win-win-win. And, while we may have wished in our heart of hearts that we could have opened the bite a couple of millimeters and given her some more, 2/3 up the retromolar pad occlusion, that's not what she wanted, right? And I think we have to have that conversation with our patients these days. And the copy denture tool is a wonderful tool, to generate more dentures in your practice, because everybody wants a backup. And this is another copy denture tool, another use is to make backups, for patients. Scanning dentures has come a long way, right? And the thing that when I'm training docs and staff on scanning dentures, that we're doing a reference denture or one of those bite rim base plate dentures, we're scanning an impression, not a denture, right? So the key points to scan on a reference denture is intaglio borders and buccal surface only. You don't need to scan the palatal or the occlusal side of the denture. Don't need it, don't want it. Save the time, save the data. It makes for a much quicker scan. So, and sometimes the palatal side of the denture is very difficult to scan. So when I'm doing a reference denture, the only data that I need is the impression, right? Intaglio borders, but also the buccal surfaces, of course, so that the software can align the bite, but also so that the lab tech can see where the teeth are, occlusal plane, size and shape, and size of ledge, midline. All that data is transferred with that scan. Now, when we're doing a copy denture, we do have to scan the whole denture, what we call a 360 scan. Sometimes it's a challenging scan. There's no doubt about it. Powder helps. If powder is not helping me, I will take a few drops of wax and put in the areas that are challenging, and that will give the scanner some reference points. If I happen to see some liquid dam material in a dental office, I'll say, let's use that. And we'll put little drops of liquid dam on the denture, or little small squiggly lines of liquid dam. You don't need a bunch, but just a little high point somewhere on that palatal area of the denture will help that scanner recognize it. And then the lab guys can clean that up in the software. So not a big deal, but it just makes the scan go a little quicker. But just remember, reference dentures, you don't need to scan that palatal area. Make your day go a whole lot better. Of course, we're using this stuff that's 3 times stronger than acrylic for implant cases. My thought was when I heard it, that it's 3 times stronger about all my locator dentures that had fractured in my life. And, if I got a material that's 3 times stronger, why would I not want to use it, right? So, overdentures is a very common use in the world, in the lab world now. And by the way, NDX is kind of leading the way. NDX was one of the first labs I trained 4 years ago in the digital denture workflows using the Lucitone digital print materials. And they've kind of led the way in the nation, developing these techniques, and they're really good at it. So they do all these things for you. But the digital overdentures, locators, conus, certainly makes for a much better denture. Not only is it stronger, but it fits better. So, we're getting better results with the digital overdentures, and they're super easy. And, we're doing things like 2-appointment digital locator or digital conus overdentures. The picture here you see, is a prototype conversion, an implant conversion. The materials being 3 times stronger makes a lot of sense to use them for a conversion denture. So one of the NDX labs, really, all they do is All-on-X appliances, and they use this product, for their conversions because of the strength and because of the ease of fabrication, but just a win-win for everybody. So for the prototypes and, provisionals, it makes for a great product. And there's a product that we're not going to have time to talk about today, but Bridge Base, and it's basically a fully digital fixed implant restoration that allows a metal supported digital overlay of an appliance, could be zirconia or printed denture, that dentists can do from a scan. So we can do a scan in the mouth and deliver a final fixed appliance, because of the accuracy of the scan post, the accuracy of the scanner, and the accuracy of the workflow in the laboratory and the manufacturing process, a fixed full arch implant restoration from a scan. And that's just where we are in technology today. So it's pretty exciting. So, and, I know you guys got to get back on the floor. So, I was told to keep this brief, and actually went, a little shorter than we hoped for, but nothing's wrong with that, right? We can get at it. Each of us can go at it. So if there's any questions, I'll answer those now, and turn it back over to NDX.